Hey everybody, this is Sean from the Dukes of Dice, and today I want to talk to you about Charterstone from Stonemaier Games. Now, the Dukes were fortunate enough to get an advanced copy of Charterstone from Stonemaier, and if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that Alex has actually been playing in Jamie Stegmaier's group in St. Louis. So that's how he's been playing Charterstone. And then here locally in Albuquerque, I've been playing with our buddies Nick, and then Matt and Matthew from Wham, which if you go to dukesdice.com, you can see a bunch of amazing short form reviews that they do of board games. So what we wanted to do for Charterstone is a couple different things. So come, let's see, the 23rd of October, you're going to see my and Alex's full review in the podcast. So be sure to check out dukesdice.com, listen to the podcast. You'll get a full review of Charterstone, spoiler free. So kind of talking through everything that we've experienced so far. Go to dukesofdice.com right now, and the Wham review is up, where Matthew and Matt are going to go through their thoughts on Charterstone. Again, spoiler-free. So now here we are with kind of my initial impressions that are spoiler-free. I'm going to do another video that has some spoilers for where we've managed to get through. So that being said, just again, realize no spoilers. There may be some light mention of possibilities, but no specifics whatsoever, if that makes sense. So let's take a look at Charterstone. All right, so the first thing I got to say about Charterstone, this isn't going to be an exhaustive rules overview. If you want to go check out our buddy Rodney Smith over at Watch It Played on his YouTube channel, he did an amazing rules overview to learn basically the first game. Now, when you open your copy of Charterstone, the first thing you got to do is make sure you don't go get into everything. This is a legacy game. This is a game where you want to play with the same group of people, and basically you're going to be uncovering new rules, new mechanics, new components, all sorts of stuff. So when you first open it, there's sort of a sheet that basically, see, I gotta be careful what I pull out of this right now. But there's this chronicle. And the chronicle says, please read this page first before looking at anything else in the box. And that's absolutely true. Make sure you do that. Make sure you don't go investigating everything in the box. Now, I can't show you this chronicle. The chronicle is kind of your rule book, and then there is a spot for stories. I can say that. So the rule book has a bunch of empty spaces, and as you progress in the game, you're going to add stickers to the rule book to add new rules, to change old rules, etc. And there's a narrative element, and so there is a place for the different story narrative elements in here as well that you're going to use with stickers. So there's that. On the very back, and I'm not going to show you the back, on the very back there's an icon guide to kind of help figure out what's what, but don't spend too much time looking at it because that can give you spoilers. So you got that. You've also got the Atoma, the solo player guide for Charterstone. And then you have the different board components. No spoilers here. This is where your objectives go. Oops. This is where the advancement cards go, which you're going to see plenty of. All right, I got to be careful opening this because on one side of the map, we have our game that's been played through game 9 of 12. So I don't want to open that side of the map, but here, all right. So here we have a completely pristine side of the map, all right? So this is what you're going to start off with Charterstone. You have the town center, or actually it's called the commons. The commons there in the center that are buildings that kind of everyone's getting to use throughout the game. And then what you're going to do as you read through is you're going to open up the scriptorum, and this has a bunch of different components in it. Now, there are some starter components. So there's initial resources, there are resources and some other things, but I have in here unlocked components, so I can't really show this to you right now. Everyone's also going to get a charter chest. Yeah, I guess I can show this to you. A charter chest, and in here I have all of the pieces that I need. This is my particular charter, which I've titled the Duchy, because you can name your stuff because it's a legacy game. So the green charter, because I'm always green player, is the Duchy, and it's really cool because it has some things that you can fill out that give you different advantages throughout the campaign. So you open this up, you have your initial workers, and then you've got some different resources you could play with, all sorts of things in here. Okay, so that is that, but then we have this box here. This is the index, and this is made up of hundreds of cards, some of them with, or actually I think they're all stickers, and some of them are meant to be stuck. Some of them are new buildings that you're gonna place here on the board. Initially in your charter chest, you get some starter buildings. So some players might specialize in wood, others in pumpkins, others in metal, etc. And so you have some starter buildings that kind of focus on that. And then here, there's new buildings, there's new rules, there's all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to get too much into that. So that's what you can expect when you open up Charterstone. And again, I don't want to go too much into how you get the board set up or how the rules work, anything like that. So I just kind of want to tell you my initial thoughts, kind of spoiler free at this point. So at its heart, I think that Charterstone is a pretty simple worker placement and resource management game. That's the heart of it. Basically, you have two workers, and you can play a worker, play another worker, or you can recall your workers. So definitely some influence from Jamie's other game, Euphoria. But maybe that's really the only similarity, because it is a very different game. In fact, when Alex first told me, because he got his initial plays in before I did, he's like, "Oh, it's very reminiscent of Euphoria." But really, I think it's just that. Place workers, get a benefit, and then pull them back. And like I said, especially at the beginning, there are several different basic resources, and you're just taking those resources, you're turning them into other things. Maybe you're turning resources into money. Maybe you're spending resources and money to get the different advancement cards. Advancement cards, there's going to be several types throughout the game that you're going to unlock as you progress. There's some that you start off with, and then you're going to unlock those at different rates than other groups might be playing or might be unlocking them at. So lots of variability, I think, from one play group to the next, which is, I think, a pretty interesting thing. And that's something that Jamie has kind of been talking about while he's been teasing Charterstone for the last several months, a year or more even, that when all is said and done, you're going to have a very different map, a very different final game than some other campaigns, some other groups might. And I think that's pretty neat. But going back to what I think about the game initially, there's not a lot of initial rules overhead, and that's nice because the game is going to start unlocking rules, new rules, or changing old rules pretty quickly. And it was interesting. I didn't have an issue with it. I was kind of fine with these new rules being added at the pace that they were. I think some other players in our group thought it might have been a little bit too much, but I enjoyed it because I think at its heart, Charterstone out of the box is not an interesting game, and I don't think it was meant to be. Charterstone, once you have opened several new rules, new buildings, new mechanics, new components, that's when it gets really interesting. That was just sort of the skeleton to build on. And so kind of when I think of a game like Pandemic Legacy, Pandemic's a fine game, and if you listen to the podcast, you've heard me talk about how I think Pandemic's fine and I enjoy it. I've played it to death on the iPad, and I have no real desire to play Pandemic in real life. But when I started playing Pandemic Legacy, you took that skeleton of Pandemic and then added a bunch of really cool stuff to it with a very compelling narrative hook that made the whole thing feel cinematic. So I think that's pretty cool what Legacy games can do. So same thing here, there's the skeleton of a game that's Charterstone right out of the box, and then as you add more stuff, things are going to get pretty interesting. And so I think it's just kind of dependent on players, how comfortable they are with the speed at which things unlock. Because that certainly might be frustrating to some people because they're slowly trying to, or quickly trying to keep up with the pace of the new rules. Like I said, it wasn't really an issue for me, but I could see how it could be for some people. So the other things I was thinking about when talking about this, because again, I gotta be careful not to spoil things. I think that there are legitimate paths to victory in a given game of a campaign. Because again, there are 12 games in the campaign. And each game, I think, can play out very differently from one game to the next for a variety of reasons. Number one, it could be because of what buildings have been added or taken away, built over. Yeah, that's fine. What buildings have been added or taken away might change your strategy. Or there may be some rules that might incentivize a particular course of play over another course of play. So I feel like maybe initially my first couple of plays, I kind of played things out similarly, but as the board started getting crazy, that changed. That changed big time. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate that there were some games where I completely ignored the quota track up here, which is a good way to get rid of excess resources. And other games, I really focused on the reputation track, which is good for some endgame scoring. And other games, I heavily focused on it. I appreciate that there were some times I had kind of a resource engine going and had some way to funnel that into points and whatnot. But ultimately, I think it's really rewarding being able to try out a bunch of different strategies. And one of my favorite games of all time is Tzolk'in. And for the most part, I do the same thing in Tzolk'in every time. It's just the same set of actions, rinse, repeat, etc. Here, I don't think you could really do that. Things are going to change quickly enough and stay fresh that you just can't go through some rote mechanics and get to the same effects every time. One of the last games I played, I felt like that was the first time I truly saw a strong engine. I think there's some engine building, and depending on what buildings you have available to you and some other rules factors I can't really talk about, you can have some kind of engine. But I was able to put together this incredible engine this last time, and I can't do it again. Or if I do it again, there's going to be some detriment to me in the long run. It let me win the first game. In fact, it was game 9, and that was the first game that I've won of the whole thing. But I've been enjoying my plays, even losing. And there are ways, there are some consolation prizes, so to speak, that you get by losing, which have been nice. And it's not so much a did I win or did I lose? You're going to get benefits for how much you score. And because basically you could see on the board, there are stars at every 10 points. And those stars are going to translate into some ongoing benefits throughout the game. So it could be that, my opponent got 60 points and I got 59 points. So even though I lost by 1, I also am a star short because I got to get to that full 10 to get that extra star. So some interesting things happening there. Now, the one thing I also wanted to talk about was the narrative element of the game. And without going into details about it, I feel like it's not as strong as it was in, say, Pandemic Legacy. Now, Pandemic Legacy did an amazing job, like I kind of referred to earlier. And it might be a bit of an unfair comparison. I think, and this is something we kind of talked about in our group, but I think that Jamie had a very different goal in mind in designing this, where Pandemic could be cooperative, or by its very nature, right? And it kind of lended to this feeling of we're all together, and it lended itself to that cinematic nature for whatever reason. I can't explain why it worked the way that it did. Here, Jamie's designed a Euro game, and he's designed a Euro game, I think, for replayability. So when you're done with game 12, you have a game that, if you want to, you can just keep playing over and over and over again. And so I feel like the design on the mechanics took precedence, and so I wasn't as hooked by the narrative. Certainly, there were times when I was like, oh, that's interesting. And there were times when the narrative would have certain effects on certain players. And that was really interesting too. So I don't want to say that it's not there, because it is. There is a narrative there. It was compelling at times, but it didn't hook me as much as, say, Pandemic Legacy. Now, again, I'm on game 9. I've got 3 games left to play. That could completely change. I don't know, but that could completely change. So I'm curious to see how that's going to end. And then I'm also curious with Jamie's claim that when we're done, we're going to have a game that I can play over and over again. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be something that I find really compelling. I'm curious. I'm certainly open-minded. I think of some of my, my favorite games, my favorite Euros, like Le Havre, for example. Well, this is a whole different weight class than Le Havre, even when you've added some of these other things to it. I'm curious what I'm going to think about this game and wanting to play the finished board when we're all done, because I don't know at this point, and I'll be happy to report back when I get that figured out. And I also don't know, is that something that I just want to play with the group that I played with, who is used to what's out there, who doesn't have to learn a bunch of rules, because we've been gradually unlocking these rules over 12 games, or if I'm going to be okay playing it with people who have never played Charterstone before. And that seems kind of weird, because then they're not going to get to experience unlocking things, and I don't think I would do that. The other cool thing is that because there are two boards, right? It's double-sided board. You're like, well, why is that there? Because when all is said and done, you can order a recharge pack. A recharge pack comes with a new index, which has all the cards, and it comes with a new rule book. You put away all of the new components you've unlocked, put them back where you got them, get rid of kind of everything else, and now you have a fresh rule book that's blank, and you have the new index, so you can play Charterstone a second time through. And I'm telling you right now, I'm absolutely doing that. I have enjoyed this enough that I'm really excited to play with Raquel and Mariah. Now this plays up to 6 players. Our group played with 4. I think Alex's group was playing with 6. There are ways that you can fill in some of the inactive charters, which is cool. So it kind of helps with scalability there. But I will absolutely play this with Raquel and Mariah. I think both of them are going to love it. Now, neither of them has played a Legacy game. I have a copy of Pandemic Legacy waiting for the two of them to play at some point, and I think they're going to enjoy this more. Number one, neither of them are that crazy about Pandemic to begin with. Number two, they both like this kind of light, medium weight Euro, resource management, worker placement. They love that stuff. They love Lords of Waterdeep, and Raquel likes some heavier stuff too, and even Mariah does to a certain extent. So I'm really encouraged. I think they're going to really enjoy the game, and I think that their minds are going to be blown by the Legacy elements, because they haven't seen it yet, right? Like, if I had never played Pandemic Legacy, I think certainly all of the additions would certainly blow my mind more than they did, just because I kind of have that point of comparison. So I'm really excited for them to see it. Now then the question becomes, okay, play it once through with my group of 4. I'm going to get the recharge pack, play again with Raquel and Mariah. Am I going to buy another copy of Charterstone to play once or twice more with another group? That I don't know, and I'm leaning towards I don't think so. I think that with the initial game, with a recharge pack, that's a lot of experience. That's 24 games, and I think that's a pretty enriching experience. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It could be that I love getting through Game 12 with my original group, and then really enjoy it with Raquel and Mariah. I don't know who I'd play with again, or is there value in seeing how things change, how one experience is to the next, and maybe the 3 of us decide, hey, let's try it again and see what happens when we make some other choices. Or when, because basically you're not going to unlock everything at the same time, at the same rate, or even at all necessarily. And that's really interesting. And I think that there is certainly a part of me that wants to explore the different ways this game can play out, because I know that certain games we had could have been very differently had rules been introduced in a reverse order, or if one rule had not been there at all until way later. There were times that we played a game and we're like, wow, we wish that rule had come up sooner for reason X or Y, whatever. So I think there's some interest in exploring some of that space. So I think I gave you more than just kind of my first initial impressions. I think Alex is actually a little mad at me for almost doing the full spoiler-free review. So yeah, what I'm not going to do right now is I'm not going to rate the game. So if you don't know, over the Dukes of Dice, we have a 6-point scale. A 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. A 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for our top 10 games of all time. Now, this is not going to be a 1. In case you can't tell, I do enjoy this game. I really do enjoy this game. It is a legacy game, which warrants some special consideration, I think. But right now, just know that I think that this is an experience that's worthwhile, especially if you like Euro games, if you like legacy games, if you're a fan of Stonemaier games, because there are, I think, some kind of classic Stonemaier elements here, and I'm a big fan of Jamie and what he does. I mean, that's true. So I think that there is some tremendous value in this game and some great experiences that can be had. I'm going to withhold my final rating for the podcast because Alex will kill me. So be sure to check out the Dukes of Dice podcast that's going to be launching the Monday after this video goes live. I think I said that's October 23rd, where Alex and I will be doing our full review, which will probably be repetitive of some of what I've said here. And then we'll give you our final thoughts on the game and our final rating. So if you are adventurous and want to spoil your experience, I'm going to be doing another video, like I mentioned earlier, that's going to be full of spoilers, talking about what we've seen and what I've thought of it. So you can check that out, but be warned, there are spoilers. So until next time, this is Sean for the Dukes of Dice, and I'll catch you later.